Oh, I think we lost Nikki.
I think you're right.
Okay, so I guess this is what I prepared. Every act of creation is the first act of uh, every creation is the first act of destruction. So when Nikki posted the thing, I was thinking about. Oh, we got Nikki. Okay, good.
I'm sorry, I completely just got like cut off for some reason. I don't know what happened. Sorry about that.
Okay, go start.
Welcome to the Infinite Imaginarium, a co-creative enterprise where we can expand and intensify our light by expanding our hearts. We can do this by choosing everything that generates joyous emotions and step out from what has always been familiar. We can reach to a higher plane of existence. This is your ascension. Do not hesitate and do not doubt yourself. Whether or not you believe it, you are creating your own reality. You can do this as quickly or as slowly as you desire. Look not to what is happening outside of you. Instead, focus on what is happening inside of you. Transmutation begins at the level of consciousness, then progresses into your physical body, your cells, your DNA, and then your external reality. Monitor your thoughts closely, for this is meditation. As consciousness expands, creation is swift and thoughts manifest almost instantaneously, because there is no time construct in fifth density. This is your ascension. This is your creation. This is the infinite imaginarium.
Every act of creation is the first act of destruction. I'm sitting at the edge of the abyss, feet dangling at infinity. I feel the pain of the world, the sorrow of humanity, the confusion of society. The pain seeps through the cracks of reality, insulated into my whole being. A world of illusion on top of a massive human suffering and environment degradation. Life is supposed to be more joyful than this, more real, more meaningful. The world is supposed to be more beautiful. We're not supposed to hate nature. We're not meant to be so serious. Things were never supposed to be this dire. I call it the death of the narrative of our old culture, the death of the narrative of fragmented problems to be solved, as unforgiving facts, as unmentionable taboo subjects are simply ignored. Okay, so we kind of did an impromptu little thing, but I'd like to invite. We have someone that's new to the show, Bathtub Jen. So I just kind of wanted to mention her, and I guess from here we're gonna have Nikki start off, and then whatever anybody wants to say, and we'll just see where the conversation takes us. Nikki, take over. Nikki, you're on mute.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Yeah, I was trying to unmute myself. My phone's being a bit strange. Yeah, I just wanted to start off talking about what I would encapsulate, and I guess a lot of you have heard this term before. What I would, how I would say that the conscious keys of creation relate to our process of living on the planet and how we actually interact with each other. And what it, the way I've come to understand it is it's basically putting into practice the energetic forces of the kind of archetypal masculine, feminine energies, so we can create some kind of harmony. Because what we can sort of strive to create then is the growth that we want and the advancement that we want for humanity, by tapping into that harmony. So what I really wanted to sort of touch on was starting to look at and understand what the archetypes actually are, you know, which I guess, you know, it's like anything, is subjective, and people will see this in a different way. They, you know, if you said to somebody, what is the archetypal male, people may come out with some really obvious answers, but they might come out with some things that differ from another person's answers. So it's not set in stone, it's not black and white, but it's really about achieving some kind of harmonious relationship between the two, because obviously with every person there is a masculine element and a female element, and this directly kind of relates to our creation process and how we create things. And if there's some kind of conflict between those masculine and feminine energies, then there's always going to be some kind of external conflict playing out on the outside, you know, or what we perceive to be the outside. So it's kind of getting in touch with both those elements within your being, within yourself, you know, that I was quite interested in talking about, and how we can sort of tap into that feeling of, you know, responding to certain situations in either the masculine or the feminine, and also, which sounds strange, a combination of both. You know, there can actually be a blend, which is almost kind of like a new thing altogether. It's like the blend of those two energies creates a new energy, which is like everything in creation. You know, as artists create, they're inspired when they see art from others, and then they create something new, and then they blend the two things together, and then they create something else. And it's like everything, you know, everything in creation, everything in our world is about blending things together to create something new, which falls into the Holy Trinity. You know, there's always like two things that blend together, and then it creates a third thing, you know, like the classic, you know, male, female energies can come together and create a new energy, you know, you know, a male and a female human can create a baby. And then, you know, that's like kind of like the third element to the Trinity. So that's kind of what I wanted to start off tonight's show talking about, because I think people can be imbalanced in sort of one area or another. And it could actually be that a male, you know, just for an example, could be imbalanced. You know, it could be too much of a feminine energy. It's like the yin and the yang. Some women, you know, they look very feminine on the outside, but they project a lot of male energy. You know, they're very yang, very fiery, and you know, they project a lot of that energy. And also, conversely, a male who could be very stereotypically male on the surface, you know, physical appearance and behaviors could be quite male. They could actually be very feminine, very yin, and I don't want to say submissive, but I guess it's an easy way for people to understand it. And like anything, you can be very much in one direction at the detriment of the other direction, like the right hemisphere of the brain and the left hemisphere of the brain. You know, some people are very predominantly right hemisphere. They're very prone to, perhaps, you know, in this third dimensional existence, they may be prone to escapism because they can't handle the functionality elements of day-to-day life. So they might be prone to taking drugs and drinking a lot of alcohol, but they'll be amazing artists, amazing musicians, but they just can't function in the normal world because there's an imbalance there. They're very much right hemisphere of the brain, and the left hemisphere is suffering, is not active. It's not being, a bit like a muscle, it's not being exercised, and it's just become really slack. And so that part of the person is kind of dormant, and it doesn't really have a lot of activity. And obviously, in reverse, you have somebody who's completely left hemisphere of the brain. He doesn't really have any sort of artistic abilities, or is very black and white about everything, doesn't really connect anything up, can't see the bigger picture, tends to have a tunnel vision. So I guess I feel that there has to be some kind of balance, and I don't necessarily know the answer, which is why it's good that we're having this show and hopefully this discussion tonight, because I don't have all the answers as to how we create that harmony, how we can achieve that harmonious relationship within ourselves, and then we can project that out into the world, and that's, then we start to create a harmonious environment. So anyway, just to start off, I don't want to talk too much, so I hope somebody else can cut in at this point.
Yeah, I guess I know for me, as I always kind of be introspective. I notice. Well, I kind of mentioned this before. Like, I used to when I was younger, I was kind of typical male. I played sports. I hide my emotions. It's kind of funny because I was very kind of like practical, and like for instance too, I was never into really any, well, besides music, but not really into like any kind of art really, besides music. Then like senior year, I got like exposed to a couple books, started smoking weed, and then I kind of had these new experiences, and then I kind of changed. I kind of evolved a little bit. And it's funny because looking back on my development and I'm in no way balanced. I struggle with myself a lot, but I do recognize that, what you were saying, and it kind of like, it's always like a pendulum of emotions, a pendulum of things that swirl inside of me, and well, I kind of, I don't know, I guess because I analyze too much, but what I figured, and especially too looking back on my relationships, I always thought, they had that old kind of like saying, opposites attract. But for me, I viewed it as complementary. You need like a complementary piece to you. Like I had this really good relationship with this girl, but we were too much alike, and we were like a little bit too much of the same, and it didn't necessarily work out that good. But then, the opposite is kind of true too. Like if you have this someone, and I'm usually more attracted to, let's say, a strong female, and so they're, and I'm more of like not submissive, but I'm more, especially in the beginning, kind of like quiet, kind of like easygoing, kind of like whatever about stuff. But I'm totally, now I'm like totally abstract. I even get in problems and arguments in relationships about like being too aloof about stuff, and I'm like, you don't need to, like, we don't need to have a plan, we don't need to do that. And like we always get in, I remember my first girlfriend, we always get in these conversations because she wanted to like be black and white and define everything. And this is the when I was like reading a lot of Jack Kerouac and being a Dharma bum, and I was like, you don't like those words are meaningless. Like reading Nietzsche and stuff like that. So like I was totally like the opposite of her, but we worked pretty well together. But there was always this moment of where we had this communication breakdown, right? Because and I think we do this on an individual level, and then scale it up, where we only view things from our perspective, or whatever that perspective is at that moment. So my girlfriend would interpret my actions and thoughts and what I said from her perspective, but I'm like, no, I don't use those words that way. Like, that's not my perspective. Like, I don't think anything's black and white. And I remember we always had this like philosophical argument, and I'm like, no, that's not how I see things. And then so there will be this communication breakdown, this frustration with each other, because we didn't view the same, like, kind of like, I guess, like the world in the same way. And we would always have these kind of like, and I remember even telling, like, later in other relationships, I'm like, we're never going to think and feel and see things the same way. And I think a lot of our problems is that we're trying to force our perspective, our perception onto it. And I think as I grow more and experience more, I'm not tied to, I'm hopefully not tied so much to different, I like the phrasing of Robert Anton Wilson and Timothy Leary, where they talk about reality tunnels. So reality tunnels are your perception of reality, and that they're lenses, and you could take one off and use another one. And actually, it's good to have different lenses. Like, sometimes you put on your scientist hat and you view everything totally objective. Sometimes you put on your creative hat. Sometimes you put on your comedic hat. Sometimes you put on your serious hat, or whatever. And I think it's important to have different lenses to view things. And always, because a lot of the problems too, and not just in relationships, but like at the world at large, you can't, like, I see this so much on the internet right now, where whatever filter bubble, reality bubble they're in, they cannot get their mind outside of that to view it from the other side's perspective. And once you do that, you see that both sides, like, most of the time, like, you see that, like, half of it is true and then half of it is not. And they're just like the yin and yang, where you're talking about, like, the opposite of each other. And I know for myself, like, I don't have, like, I think it's important, because I view, like, everything like in a fractal, like, your internal struggle, like, it scales out. So a lot of times, and this is the term Jean-Paul Sartre came up with it, and it's called bad faith, when your internal belief system and dialogue doesn't reflect the outside dialogue, and you have bad faith. And this is a lot of times the conflict within yourself. So you think one thing and you do the other thing, but you have these blinders on, and you don't realize what you're doing, because you don't want to see it, because your reality tunnel is narrow. And a lot of times, it's good because then they could mirror back some stuff that you probably need to help to balance yourself out, or even like a little bit of struggle and conflict helps you grow. But also too, when you're talking about artwork, like, it's funny because I think me and Nikki were talking about this on the chat. We're kind of talking about, like, relationships and stuff. And a lot of times I think, like, after the fact, I, like, sabotage myself, or I create a little bit of problems to create kind of like stress and struggle, because I think it makes my writing better. I kind of noticed this a long time ago. Like, this one time I was like in a really, we talk about the dark night of the soul, and I wrote this poem that's like 23 pages long, and it was like one of the best experiences writing, even though it was like out of pain and suffering. And so I think every now and then, like a different part of me always is kind of like the trickster archetype that is kind of there to throw a monkey wrench into my life, to shake things up. And I always have like this sneaky suspicion that like, oh, things are going too good. Like I'm waiting for shit to hit the fan. But yeah, and that's kind of what it brought up to me right now.
Yeah, I think when we start into the ascension um, discussions and talks, that I think a lot of the work that happens is when you become personally aware of you're not functioning within the societal structured male or female condition or position as a human being, and you sort of view things sort of simultaneously from both sides, closer to equality. That's when the messages sort of begin to seep in, and the objective view of what's put in front of you gains a little bit different lensing, like you say, Daniel, which allows us to then grow curiosity, to move forward with things that we were told and maybe never felt quite comfortable with the resolution given to us. For each person, it's kind of a different thing because, like Nikki said, in the societal archetypes, women are basically cast to be objectified, and to be the sensitive nurturer, bearer of life, and men are the aggressive function of providing comfort and security to generate a cohabitation. But the fully developed person is also the grower and giver of love and nurturing, as well as the outer ego driven male. And that's where a whole bunch of things start to just become really clear, I think, when you're in analysis of growth and understanding yourself, is when all of a sudden the roles of who we are as human beings begin to break down. There's one little thing I would touch on from a book I'm reading by Thaddeus Golas, and it's about uh, spanning into a state of mind where you're completely space. And since expansion is permeative, we can be in the same space with one or more other expanding beings. In fact, it's possible for entities of the universe to be in one or more spaces, which is kind of what I think the Imaginarium is. These expand our awarenesses and our comprehensions and our understandings. And when we're completely extended, we have a feeling of total awareness of being with all life. And there's no more resistance, that we just sort of become the vibration that's existing. And with that comes the unlocking of unlimited consciousness, or perception and feeling. And those things don't come from the duality life that we're kind of thrust into from childhood into adulthood, where it's all very material and physical. It's through drawing in sort of the emptiness, you begin to experience things, as masculine and feminine, but you kind of have to break down the ego, because the ego will kind of try to always direct you back to just the physical experience. And I think that's sort of where in society where we're moving forward, that we begin to start the process of understanding ourselves, the complexities that that lie within ourselves. But I just wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah. But also too, what I like to add to that is the kind of like the Taoist perspective. Um, the physical or the nature, how nature is kind of this non-dualistic way. There's this ebb and flow of to break it down even simpler, like a positive and negative charge. For every action, there's an equal opposite reaction, and that this like dance. That's what I used in the poetic sense. This dance of eternity to the beat of the universe is not. There's a difference between what we have of the old story of humanity, and it says that it's dualistic, it's black and white, it's this Cartesian view of the world, that it's these cause and effect, and it's like billiard balls, and you fit into this role, and you're separate from other things, and you have to then you're in your society, and you have to play this role, and you you invoke these archetypes. But nature is a little bit more like the actual nature and physical of the world. That's why there's like this disconnect, and I think the stress, because the natural flow of things is that um, things like there for destruction there is also the creation. Like wildfire in the forest burns down the forest, but it nurtures the soil, and things grow out of it. That there's also this fluidity of the both energies, and that I think as much progress we seem to have got as far as technology and whatnot, uh, there's not this kind of more Tao progress where we're going with the nature. So I'm always going back to that, and I think that for whatever reason we had this split, right? Where and it had only made progress in a certain aspect of reality, or how we set up society as far as progressing materialistically with gadgets and stuff. But and this is where I think me and Kevin, our minds have been. We went to that pretty good little intro conference with the Bioneers, and I've been reading a lot of Fritjof Copra, and he talks about systems thinking, and looking like the old story was that we needed to that nature was evil and bad, and there's and kind of the Darwin struggle of survival of the fittest. But even though that's a small aspect of and creates creativity, and the creativity brings about sustainability. So for everything, it's a whole ecosystem. The waste becomes food for another life species, and they find their niche, and they all kind of work in this kind of dance or harmony more so than gears. I even like this one saying, uh, consciousness is more than computation. It's more like orchestra. So that we have this old view of gears, but it's more like the phrase of like uh, we're not like machines, even though I like to use some of that phrase, but it's more like a dance. It's more like water, how it moves up and down, and I don't know. I want to add that to it. Hey, Dagwood.
Yeah, sometimes people often say that it's a bad thing to sabotage something that's going really well, but I actually think it's a natural process or a natural part of uh, evolving the consciousness and evolving the learning experience. So when things become really uh, sort of streamlined and everything's going really well, there's no kind of undulations or movement in the activity, that's when I think people get the urge to sort of shake it up a little bit. They might not do it on a conscious level, but it's more of a need to change the direction or up the ante in a situation. And people on the outside will sort of observe it in certain people and say, oh, why would you want to mess that up? That situation or whatever it was you were doing, that was going really well, and then you had to go and do that. You've got some sort of self-destruct button going. You're pressing the self-destruct button. That's how people perceive it, and that's how they term it. But I think that's evidence of people, of the soul, the spirit part of the person needing to give themselves more challenges. Give themselves. It's like a couple could be in a relationship and it could be going really well, and then it's like all of a sudden it all goes a bit pear-shaped. It's almost like these things come out of nowhere, and you can actually be thinking in your conscious brain, where did that come from? Why all of a sudden has that occurred? I don't understand. It was all going so well, and then suddenly out of the blue, all this weird stuff started happening. It all became very negative or whatever. And I think, that's because we manifest it on an unconscious level, because we need to challenge each other. And I think some of the best relationships, I'm not saying that you should be arguing with people and it should all be really horrible and negative all the time. There has to be the balance, like we were talking about earlier. But I do feel that sometimes in a relationship, it's not normal to be completely loved up with each other all the time, because there has to be some kind of polarity to what's happening. There has to always be the contrast so that we can understand the opposite to that. So whatever's taking place in the moment, we have to, we can understand much better and with much more clarity the opposite of that if we're in, a situation where, if we're in a situation where it's really dark and not very great, and then we can actually see and appreciate the opposite of that. Whereas if we never had any duality or any polarity, we wouldn't be able to understand the opposite, polar opposite to whatever's going on at the time. So we need to have those things happening. It can't just be one level all the time. It has to be different things. And I think if things are going on one level for a long period of time, we will create something to change it, to change the direction, or to give ourselves a challenge that we have to overcome, because it's all a learning process, and all relationships are a learning process. So people have been kind of conditioned through the media and films and what we believe to be the right thing to do, that we're striving to find this perfect relationship. But actually each relationship is a continual learning, evolving process. so it's not a case of like we strive to find this perfect relationship and then when it all goes pear-shaped it's wrong. You know, it's I don't believe that. I think that it's a positive thing in many ways. Each relationship, and when I say relationship, I don't just mean, you know, the classic marriage between two people. Every relation you have with any other person is a learning process. So they're all relationships. I mean, you could know somebody for a very short period of time. It doesn't necessarily have to be a romantic type of relationship. It could be any relationship, any connection that you have with somebody else, and it could be so minor. I mean, you could know somebody for a couple of days. You could get a job and literally know somebody or interact with a particular person for 2 days and then think, oh God, this job's not right for me. You know, it's so wrong, so I have to leave or get another job or whatever. I'm not happy. And you would go off thinking, well, those people or that person that I interacted with is not remotely significant, or it may appear on the surface that the things that you discussed with that person weren't significant or there was no real meaning behind it. But I believe there always is a meaning. There always is a meaning to every connection you have with somebody or meeting you have with somebody, even if it seems very minor at the time. And the reason I believe that is because we've drawn that into our experience. You know, we've created it, even if we're not aware of the fact that we're creating, because we're always creating things and we're projecting our energy, which then becomes our external reality.
Yeah, I kind of want to touch on that too. What you're saying about kind of like the classic fairy tale love story, right? And that it always has to be kind of like we we view, or at least the society old story of love and what we see reflected into stories, and it's changing, but it's still really seeped into our minds that, you know, you you had the fairy tale love story, right? But love is messy. Like, you can't really get hurt by only by the ones that you love, you know? Like, no one has managed to upset me more than the people that I love, you know? Because when you invest those feelings, is that's like the whole totality of that connection. Um, love is not always just positive, but you learn a lot from those trying times. You learn, actually, you know who you, like, your true friends are, or and I always kind of go to this thing about, I'm pretty big on family, but and a lot of people, when I say family, I don't necessarily mean people that are, you know, like blood relatives, but family is like that deep. Like, I always kind of had this thing with my friends, like, oh, I have friends, I got homies, and then I got family. And I have a lot of people that are family that have no actual biological relationship, but they're family because anytime there's something really bad going on, they're there. I might not speak to them for like years, but I know when shit goes down that they always have my back. And so, like, there's I call them, like, I have this family up in up north, and they actually are lifelong friends of my dad, but we, for lack of a better word, I just call them my cousins, because, like, they have always been there, and I know they'll always be there. And I have family that's blood with me, like, for instance, my grandma. I have my grandma on my mom's side. Uh, I have actually virtually no relationship with her. Some things went down with her and my mom, and I don't. I actually always refer to her as my mom's mom because she's not really my grandma. And I have my grandma from Texas, who's actually my mom's stepmom. That's my grandma. So, like, you know, building those relationships, you learn stuff on those hardships. that pain. And I remember in that old one I talked about my great grandma. But really, in those times, it tests you. And I think too, as we expand this narrative out, right, that um, it always seems like when there's a crisis, it really puts us to the test of like humanity, and this is how progress happens. And hopefully, this is where we're at right now with how much we're struggling, let's say on the individual level with ourselves, struggling within our friends, struggling finding the new way of, well, I don't fit into this story Donald Trump is saying. I don't fall into this story that the mainstream media is saying. I want to build my own story. And this is kind of what we're doing on Minds, and I know for sure this is a conscious effort for Infinite Imaginarium, is that or on the Minds Spanish show, I want a mosaic of ideas. And I think, we each have our individual piece. We're all a little different, but we all kind of intuitively know that the way things are going, the way, let's say, mainstream society and the media is totally false. And that's what I used as in that poem, The Death of the Narrative, that thing's dead. And we're struggling to find the news story and where do we fit and what is it going to be. And I think, what kind of the core of this nugget of this show for me is, first it starts internally, right? Your internal struggle with yourself, the internal, and then it branches out to your relationships of the people that we have here on the show, our family, from the people that you interact with from day to day, and it keeps on networking out. But if you work on your node, that it'll start reflecting and mirroring out to you. And I think this is where I know I want to keep on investing on the Infinite Imaginarium, as it being an amplifier, aiding the news story, but also to helping to be a vehicle to manifest our dreams. This is what I mean about manifesting our digital dreams. So not only that we talk about it and that we, work on different things for ourselves independently, we come together and we work on ideas, but that we project it out and we attract more people, and we I think part of the old story too is you always think, oh, the government's going to do it, your parents are going to do it. Oh, if I just go to school, they're going to, I'm going to learn it there, or this and that. But I remember early on, I came to this realization, and I like to use this phrase, that I finally realized that I'm the one that I've always been waiting for. Robert Anton Wilson has this one thing where it's like an old Zen saying where you realize you're the one who makes the grass green, that you're the one who filters your perception of reality, and that the magic is that, and the kind of Terence McKenna's little thing is like, the world's made out of language, and if you only know the words, then you could create whatever you want to create. And this is, and it's this weird alchemical potion of media, of your own internal will, and being able to form these relationships so you could amplify that vibration, is where, if you see the progression of, because we're like at the infant stage of using the internet, and infant stage of social media, and this is why a lot of people view it in such a negative light, because it is. That we had Facebook, and everything's about selfies and about personalities and all this kind of face stuff. But hopefully what we're evolving towards is to minds, where it's about ideas, and those ideas resonate with people, and the more people network to that idea, that we strengthen those ideas, and then we have our pockets of nodes, and we could create. Because what I feel is that whether we know it or not, and I think we gone past the time of being so unconscious about things, because there's so many things that are affecting our reality, are affecting the environment, affecting us personally, affecting relationships, affecting society, and it's like rippling out, that we could no longer be so unconscious about this kind of stuff. That it's time for us to, that's why we always use these phrases like, are you awake, waking up, and all this kind of stuff, that we need to start, like what Nikki kind of phrased it as, the conscious keys of creation, that, that we can create stuff, like, just like, I like what Douglas Rushcraft talks about, is about program or be program, that society is just an operating system, and we could change the code to that. Like, it doesn't have to be that way. It's just another operating system. You could change it. We're not. We give up our power to, like, oh, that's just how the media is. That's just how the government is. That's just how family is. That's just how this is. Nah, it doesn't have to be that way. And now, and this is the other part of it, right? With real love and real life, it's a struggle. It's not easy. But if you have that path with heart, I mean, like, there's another thing that I always go to, and it's with Carlos Castaneda, and Don Juan tells them, all paths are folly, but if you follow the path with heart, then it could get you through those hard times. You don't know that you really, like, love something or love someone until it starts to struggle, and it makes it all worthwhile. I was just talking earlier about how much time I put into one of the newest video edits, and it was hard. I was talking to Kevin about it, but even in that pain, I loved every moment of it. I think a lot of us have that experience with different things.
Yeah, I think it's the experiencing the pain makes the opposite to that so much more enjoyable. You appreciate it more. Like I was saying before, that if everything's just on one level, there's no contrast, there's nothing to compare it to, then you don't really fully understand it. You don't know any different. It's like if going back to the relationship thing, just to use that as an example, if you were in a relationship with somebody from the age of, say, 14, and you got on really well, it was a great relationship, then you got married at sort of 22 and had children and stayed together for the rest of your life, until you were elderly, sort of well into your 70s and 80s. I'm sure, I know it's rare, but I'm sure it's happened with people. You wouldn't really know any different. You've never had any sort of challenge or anything to compare it to know what it is you're looking for, or to sort of challenge your spirit to evolve a bit more. So I'm not suggesting that you should deliberately sabotage something that's great, go out and find something that's really bad so you can compare it. But there is a very positive growth process that comes from that, having that contrast and having those experiences. And obviously life is a series of dualities, and polarities of different things going on. And some people will say to me, oh God, my life's really shit at the moment, and There's nothing good about my life. And I always say I can guarantee that very soon something good's going to happen. They're like, no, there's no way that's going to happen. You know, it's been shit for ages. It's always going to be crap, and I'm never going to have a good life. I'm cursed or whatever. But you know, because of the nature of things, that there will always be something positive that follows something negative, and conversely something negative that follows something positive. Everything is cyclical. You know, everything goes in cycles. So we on a much bigger scale, we're ending this cycle of the oppressive, dark, lack of light, which equates to lack of information, Piscean age, into this Aquarian age of information. And you know, the age of information is the beginning of an open consciousness, you know, or a golden age, or there's lots of different terms for it. Excuse me. But you know, so we've ended this cycle. We're going into a new cycle now, and there's always a beginning to a new cycle. And like anything, when something is being born, when you're birthing something new, there's always a struggle. There's always a difficulty with, you know, that transition period from the previous paradigm to the new paradigm is always difficult. You know, it's like going through labor, or, you know, there's always pains and difficulty and struggles as we move from one way of being to another. So there's always that pain barrier to go through, so we can experience the new. And I think a lot of people will try and resist it, or they'll try and do things to alleviate that pain, which I feel that they need to not try and suppress the pain, or alleviate the pain. They need to kind of allow themselves to go through that barrier, the pain barrier, which is akin to going with the flow and moving with that cycle. Because if you're trying to oppress something or stop something, you're going against the flow of energy, which is actually going to create more suffering and more pain. So I feel that there needs to be a flow there.
And can anybody hear me? Check, check.
Yeah, we can hear you good.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm definitely with you there, and that it's Cartman, right? It's
Yeah.
one of those, take the hit as a gift, and people are far too afraid of the hard times. And I know it's great to latch onto and get into the wonderful moments that we have in our lives, but the true moments of growth come with that struggle, that abrasive nature that life has with us, and we're better for it. I know it's hard to latch on to the idea that, okay, this hurt right now is good for me. I should not necessarily wallow in it, but use it, take the hit as a gift and push forward with it. Let it energize me. I'm learning something from this. It's hard to do, but I think if more people could, we'd be a lot happier in our down times. And yeah, I don't know. I'll just pop in and out. I don't know really where I was going with that, but I was slightly inspired by what you were saying. Anybody?
Yeah, that's what it's about. You know, I kind of was just thinking right now because I wanted to kind of trigger Jen right there, and I always like to saying, when the going gets weird, the weird turns pro. And yeah, that's what I always loved about like the legend of Hunter S. Thompson. He was always creating some kind of chaos and then using that to strengthen his outlook or his voice or his perspective, and in the valley of the death, the American dream, he was always trying to keep on pushing forward with that.
Okay, I've definitely been triggered. I don't know how much he created the chaos as he embraced the chaos. I mean, that was the whole thing with gonzo journalism is, find an event, immerse yourself in the event, and then become the story. And embracing the chaos is something that I am just now finally at this stage in my life learning how to do. And it has already been one hell of a ride. And I just want to say thank you for having me on here. And I'm going to bow back out, but we'll see what happens.
Bravo.
Yeah, I kind of, to me, the chaos is bred from not paying due homage to the construction in a lot of ways. And I would just sort of look at the way affluent people sort of continue to carry forward this societal method, which continues to be extractive at the base of consciousness. It seems to draw and commodify the human condition, which life as a function just simply can't be held within that constraint, within our creativity. And when we look at, when it reaches the extreme, when it reaches like the 1789 point in France, where there's this completely pulling, commodifying the people within a society, within the connection points to their demise, to sickness and hunger, which we're kind of tiptoeing around. It forces this engine, which creates the chaos. The chaos is sort of the feeder from discomfort, and then large changes come about. And like when you have big people who own things in totality, and everyone is just within a rentier class, and they feel that the suppression that just can only go to the point of the loss of the feeling of upward mobility. And then the artist writes, and the painter paints, and the protester stands up and finds their voice in unison, because it forces the chaos, breaks down the barriers, and forces people back together, and sort of unites in an energy of redistribution, and breaking down the stereotype, which is really what I think diving into this information age is the really critical part. Is we've become less about gathering and storing fact, because it's evolving too quickly, and now we're just sort of passively processing everything as it comes through, which is in turn sort of making us thrust into conscious beings, those that are making the inroads to it. And that, I think, Daniel and I say we want to make consciousness sexy, because we want everyone to realize that in reality they're projectors. The people really believe that they're seeing reality come to them, and it's so empowering to realize that you are projecting your reality out from you. So that's just sort of what I have been experiencing and wondering with this new leadership and where it's going. Like, I think with an ego that big that we're going to have the guy who can push it right to the edge and force art out in such a magnanimous way that the narrative has nothing to do but die, and you know, give people a place to self-identify again. That's what I see out of all of this, is more people tapping into the fact that this narrative isn't applicable to them, that they're embracing different, you know, this the whole movement in social justice work and being acceptant of alternative lifestyles and things. I think that that's bringing a much healthy chaos to our discussions. And I'll just step away there.
What? And mic check again. People hear me?
Yeah.
Right on. Thanks. You know, I'm with you in that, and I think on the consciousness level, especially with the way things are transpiring in our political spectrum in this country today, people are starting to wake up and just, I mean, where they're just sort of tuning out to the whole thing. We're like, well, okay, no, I'm not a part of this anymore. People need to do that on a major scale, but not necessarily within the system. We need to look at how we're living and how we're approaching society, because it's gotten way distorted, and we need to back it up a step, because, you know, as we're all talking here about consciousness, you know, we are able to create our own reality, as we found through quantum physics and a lot of other, you know, different methodologies. But right now, the majority of the population and in the collective consciousness, we've got the majority of the weight sort of anchored in this state of lethargy, that's sitting hypnotized in front of the TV, not thinking for themselves, sort of what you were saying, Kev, about, you know, we need to step out and realize ourselves. We need to realize what we are. You know, we're divine beings here that can create everything around us. And right now we're turning this place into a cesspool. And unless we can tip the scales with that collective consciousness, I think we're doomed. Sorry, I shouldn't say that. I'm one of the positive minds that needs to keep that scale on the right side. But yeah, no, I've got a lot of hope here, and I do see things changing for the better, and I see a lot of light bulbs lighting up real quick. Hopefully, we can get the mass of this thing to the event horizon before we crash. Anybody?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always kind of my outlook is always positive, but you know, kind of like that we're talking about the different aspects within yourself and outside in the world. But I'm always kind of like in this swirl of immense hope, and then also like immense despair when I look out, like, oh, you know, I get all excited, like, oh my God, we're gonna be able to do this and that, and there's all this cool stuff, and then I go and I get stuck in a comment thread. I'm like, oh my God, we're doomed as humanity. But for me, I kind of go to this Jack Kerouac saying, "Hope springs eternal," and but I think that's part of the thing that's happening right now. That, and it's so and I think it's fine that we don't know what's gonna happen, because it kind of keeps us on our toes, and this is how we're gonna finally break free, or break into the next age or stage, or whatever, however you want to phrase it. But yeah, I mean, I think we'll almost with everybody I've had, we all have conversations about like how hopeful we are, but also too we always phrase it, I like the phrase "dark night of soul," where you're like, oh my God, what's going on in this world? I can't believe this is happening or that is happening. But yeah, Nikki, you're gonna say something?
Yeah, I feel that in some respects, it's quite simple, because people always say, oh, well, you know, what can we do? Because the powers that be are controlling everything, and, you know, they've got this and that, and, you know, what can I actually do to change anything? The best way you can do anything to change your reality is to pour energy into the things that make you happy. As long as you aren't breaking any of the natural laws or hurting other people intentionally or unintentionally, or going about your life and doing destructive or damaging things. Because people say, oh, you know, if I just do what I want, I could potentially be a murderer and I could just go around murdering people. Well, obviously that happens, and people, you know, they create their own karma because of that, because obviously what they put out, they then draw something back into their reality. So that's one thing, one way of looking at it. And that's why we have such a kind of mixture, a bit of a mix of weird opposing scenarios and energies going on in the world at the moment, because obviously everybody has different projections and different ideas of what they think is the right thing to do. But the only thing that any individual person can do is do the things that give you the most joy, give you the most happiness. It sounds really simple and whimsical and like hippie, but in actual fact, it's the most powerful thing that anybody can do, because you're projecting that out into the world, and it's something that other beings or other aspects of the one consciousness can connect to. So if you are living your joy, or doing the things that make you feel happy, it's the emotion, it's the emotional center that is what manifests something that we perceive as being on the outside, as the external reality. So it's the emotion connected to the activity, and being congruent with everything you do. So if you have an intention, the activity or the action that follows the thought process or the intention must be a matching, congruent activity to the original intention. So, you know, quite often people will have an intention, but then they do something completely the opposite. Probably not necessarily in a conscious way to what their actual original intention was, and then they wonder why they can't change something in their life or create something new. Everything has to be congruent and matching, and in order for it to manifest into your external reality, or what we perceive as the external reality. So, you know, that's the only thing I would say in terms of how we can move through our lives and make our passage through life a little bit easier on ourselves, less of an uphill struggle. You know, if we kind of go with the flow, that doesn't mean that we're not going to unconsciously shake things up a bit and change the direction, because, you know, like we were saying before, if you're on one level, you know, of path, you're not going to learn or grow anyway. You need different things. But it's like with protests, I'm not, you know, I'm very impressed by, you know, groups of people that come together for a common cause, or something that they want to eradicate from society, or something that they think is, you know, horrific, and they need to get rid of it. And I think there's a lot of power, positive power, with protests and changing things. It depends on how the thought process, or the initial intention of what they want to achieve is projected. But I think the key is to be very mindful of the thought process, because whatever your thought process is, you are pouring energy in that direction. So if you're feeling a lot of hate and anger about something, you're going to create more of that. So it can work in a positive, a protest, you know, in a collective sense, can work in a positive way. It can also work in a negative way. It depends what the collective consciousness of that group is projecting. And sometimes, and quite often, with a protest, people often pour energy into the thing that they want to eradicate and actually create more of it. And I think the powers that be, you know, the relatively small group of people that have this knowledge and understand it, but use it in more of a negative way, they understand by stirring things up and pushing people into these protest situations, or, you know, negative projections of anger and you know, you can't do this to us and all the rest of it. They know that that is going to feed the very thing that they know that the collective want to rid themselves from. They want to eradicate from their environment. They know that that's going to do the opposite thing. But as I say, sometimes a protest can work in a very positive way. It depends what the collective are projecting. You know, if if you go on a, you know, what is kind of termed as a peaceful protest, still a process, and you are projecting a lot of love, you're projecting the things that you want to replace that current situation with. So the current situation that you see before you is something you don't want. So you project the thing that you do want in a protest situation, and everybody's kind of on the same wavelength, the same vibration. That would be a very positive thing. It would be like a kind of a group meditation. You know, if you get lots of people, you know, hundreds of people all meditating at the same time, you know, on a thoughts of love or something positive that they want to create in their environment, collectively that's very positive, because it's a lot more power. You know, there's more energy being poured into something. So it just depends on you know, and sometimes if you get half of the collective are on one vibration of projection and the other half of the collective are on another one, you get a kind of a weird mixed bag of stuff going on, and it kind of doesn't really culminate into anything. It can just be some weird mishmash of different things. So yeah, I would say that each individual person could say to themselves, I've got a responsibility to be mindful of my thoughts, which is what meditation is really. It's, you know, meditation is just being self-aware. So you can be doing anything. You don't have to be sort of sat on a mountain chanting or anything to meditate. You can be doing anything. You could just be cleaning the house and you become self-aware. So you become aware of your thoughts, aware of your position in your environment, almost as though you were a separate entity, being aware of something. You then become very aware of yourself, and then you can become more aware of your thoughts, and you start to observe with more clarity what happens when you have certain thought processes. So you could be you could be triggered into feeling something negative, a negative emotion, anger, or something destructive, and you could become aware of that, see what happens as a result of it, and then think, God, I can see exactly how that happened. A lot of people might think, oh God, I can't believe that I was aware of it, yet I still proceeded to go down that negative road. Then I saw the manifestation occur, or I saw what happened as a result of my negative thinking. Then they kind of feel like a failure. They're like, oh God, you know, how could I have done that when I'm quite a conscious person? But in actual fact, that's a good thing. That's a positive thing, because you've recognized it. You've become aware of it. So it's just another learning process. It's not negative. There's nothing bad about that. It just means you've become aware of yourself. And I think that's one of the keys, conscious keys of creation.
where you were talking there, the whole idea of our mindset, and we're creating reality consciously together. But with that, our attitudes, our frequency, our vibration is infectious to others. So regardless of situation, trying to keep your attitude, your intention in the best form that that bleeds into other people. How can we best try to train that philosophy into society and ourselves? I know I have a hard time with it. Anybody have any ideas on how we can inject that, inoculate society with something like that?
Short answer, no. uh, no, Kevin, what were you gonna say?
I was just, I mean, they asked the Dalai Lama, what's the point of life? And he said, it's to be happy. And I think that you know, Daniel, the experience we had with that collective of 30 people on the Bioneers conference, you know, there was a nervous energy. And then, like the presenter said, we came to trust just because here we are gathered together again up from all over the place. And, you know, no one's really aware of what's going on or where it's going or what it is. But then once trust is formed, then feelings begin to flow. And to me, so when you wake up and your first thought becomes, I'm going to be positive, then the first thing you're doing is you're looking for positivity. And then you're seeing the better part of people. And then you become confident because trust builds within you. And then love begins to emanate because you begin to embody empathy, because you understand compassionately that by being together in entanglement as an observer, you highlight what you see that's good if you choose that road, and then healing is spurned from that. And so I think that it all starts with that seed of happiness, which is, I think, what we're here. It's what I'm here on Minds for. Is I want to seed things that make you see things in a positive, energetic light to hopefully have constructive, intuitive conversations about things, as opposed to, you know, a lot of people come to share the dark news or what's wrong or the whatever this I don't even know what this Pizzagate thing is. Kind of blows my mind. I just sort of skim over that kind of stuff because there's lots of darkness everywhere, but that comes from focusing on those energies, like Nikki said. So when you eradicate yourself from that narrative, Daniel, like we're trying to do, is bring people into themselves and find some truth within, then I think automatically this happens. The tipping point comes, and it's sort of self-feeding. I know I go to the job site. This is a good example. So it's raining and everyone's working. There's, you know, I'm indoors. I'm dressed in reasonably nice clothes. I'm dry. I've got tennis shoes on, and everyone looks at me and goes, "Ah." And then by the middle of the day, when I've talked to everyone, looked them in the eye, smiled, found out something I liked about them, brightened their day, shared maybe some knowledge from, you know, my experiences. There's a cohesive growth to the amount of accomplishment that takes place within that group. That infectious energy begins to transmute spontaneously amongst people, and they become more focused on the task. And so, to me, it's just fundamental that the experience of engaging. I learned that from my grandpa. You engage everybody. It doesn't have to be a lot. You can just find the one thing you like and throw it into their realm, and all of a sudden that trust is instantaneously built, and then they start to participate in spreading the better part of reality. And anyway, that's that.
Yeah, it's it's kind of like this quote that I read earlier. Um, the thousand forests grow out of a single acorn, and that seed of happiness. I think this is kind of part of my little dark secret of what I'm doing with the video edits. Is kind of everything what Kevin was saying is we've been working consciously, unconsciously, separate on the same kind of idea of Kevin phrases it as making consciousness sexy, and then I phrase it kind of as what came to me in a dream is, how do you say something deep? Why can't you say something deep and have a dope ass beat? So having this, because a lot of times when you go to, like, you think wisdom is kind of like, oh, the Dalai Lama, you have to be a monk, like it's something other, like a lot of people from the normal perspective has to like go out there and like all this. That's, I don't have time to like you know be a physics professor or be the Dalai Lama. They think of it like as extraordinary. That I go to my job and then I go and I watch these silly YouTube videos, or I go and drink on the weekends or whatever, and all this kind of stuff. But I think you could blend the both together. You could, that kind of entertainment can also be productive, and you can have something really enjoyable and fun, and have it fulfilling and fulfill you and inspire you, and make it productive. And I think these shows are kind of like, we have loose space topics, but we never stay on topic, and we're kind of through whatever the conversation is, and hopefully we're getting little seeds of ideas, seeds of happiness, seeds of joy, seeds of wisdom. But also too, I want to make them grow and be alive, and to be alive, not to, I mean, I think we have too many fake things, right? We have everything that's just dark, oh, Pizzagate or whatever, and it's always phrased as this dark cloud, and the world's going to end, or it's this fakeness of this cosmetic kind of overproduced type of stuff. But what I want is kind of like the rawness, kind of the struggle, but also a little bit of finesse, a little bit of a beat, and to always kind of be growing this. And for instance, like, this is kind of why I kind of reached out to Jen to come on, because I want other people to kind of enter the Imaginarium, get inspired, even if they're just like kind of listening in the background, maybe get ideas. But you could work on things independently, come to the Imaginarium, maybe kick around, like it's like kind of like a think tank. But all through the weeks leading up to the next show, you could work independently, and you could kind of like touch base, like, oh, like I view it in the near future of like, actually Jen did kind of mention this, and this is what I really want. Like, she's like, oh, I want an intro for your show. Do you think you could video edit? And I'm like, yeah, I could do it. Like, give an idea and we play with it, and we kind of work with it independently. We come together and we kick around ideas. This is how I want the Infinite Imaginarium to like kind of grow. It's hopefully too, even in the way future, it's somehow embedded in the next social network, or if Minds keeps on growing, then we do a subdomain, and it's just an area where you could play out anything. And later on, I'm kind of doing it, but I haven't been able to focus much energy, and is with another user. The other aspect of it is kind of this nonprofit entity to it. So what it is like open source charity, and we're using Lumio to help organize it. And so basically, it's kind of basically WikiBeam. If you have an idea, you post it up there. Like there's different variations of this idea, like that's happened on DiviDAO, and I think later somehow, when the time is right, that network and that idea or that seed of an idea will grow. Right now, I just see little sprouts of the Imaginarium happening, and and really, I know for like right now, it's me and Nikki's and Kevin's kind of vision that we're having. But once people like put their toes in the water, you could go wild with it. You could do whatever you want. You can still keep your own individual identity, but it's a place for you to incubate new ideas, whatever it be. It doesn't necessarily. And I have a very loose sense of art. Like I think, like I remember I had this discussion with Gus Spiders, and he's a lot more analytical and not as poetic as I am. And I'm getting all excited, and I'm like, oh yeah, did you see this or that and that? And he's like, oh, something about art. And I'm like, well, we're not using art in the same way as like, it's like, get past that. Like programming is art. However you express yourself is art. And it doesn't have to conform to like my idea of art or Nikki's idea of art or Kevin's idea of art. But there's some commonality of we all know this kind of like status quo is not cool. Like the first people to come onto Minds were the fringe. I remember, I think it was Broussard who said it, that this is the underground of the underground, the fringe of the fringe. The first, pioneers. Like this is why though the West Coast is kind of crazy. I remember hearing this story. Like everybody, with the frontier, like everybody kept on, like all the crazy people kept on moving west and kept on going west, and then that's why it's seeded like the Bay Area and stuff like that. But we're the ones that are keep on going a little bit further with things and say, nah, we need to create our own stuff and need to do this. And I think hopefully if we start planting those seeds and seeing what grows, and hopefully Minds could help us. There's other projects out there, but yeah, I mean that's what I hope for the Infinite Imaginarium. I think it's still open for any interpretation.
Yeah, it's good that any form of art is art to me is creation. So I know I've mentioned this before, but the whole thing about plagiarization of things, for me, a negative plagiarization of something would be, like me, for example, taking one of the Harry Potter books, writing it exactly the same as J.K. Rowling, and then saying it was my book. That would be like a really out of order, negative form of plagiarization. But if you look at somebody else's artwork, or you listen to some music and you think, right, I'm going to mix that into something, or that's inspired me to create something that is kind of a offshoot of what they've created, but it's now I've created something new because I've blended it with something that I created. So I've used some of their stuff, but I've blended it with mine, and then it's created this new thing. I don't see that as a plagiarization. And I actually think it would be a bit of a travesty to sort of hide away artwork. If I created some artwork and shared it, or even writing, I would be completely happy and open to allow people to use it, to share it about, or add to it and mix it up, or whatever they wanted to do, because I feel that that is what the creation process is. it's an ongoing process of one thing that you become aware of, and then it maybe inspires you, and then you create something new from that, a continuation. So you are taking some of that present element of that initial creation that you've observed, which could be termed as the plagiarization, but then you're not now creating something new. So I feel that it's good that we share our art and our feelings and our thoughts, and society has conditioned everybody to think that that's bad, you know, that if you've created something, that it belongs to you, it's solely yours, and nobody can take it from you, and if they do, then it's a really bad thing and they've stolen it from you, and you know, all that sort of thing. And I don't agree with any of that at all. As I say, there are limits to what, you know, that word plagiarization, there are limits, but I feel that things should be shared openly. Music and writing and, you know, painting, art, whatever it is, just as we're sharing now, you know, just conversations, views and ideas. You know, a lot of people are still of the mindset, oh, I'm not going to reveal that, or I'm not going to share my ideas because somebody might steal it and use it for monetary gain, you know, and they won't, you know, there's so many people that wouldn't come forward and share things because they're still heavily conditioned to think that they shouldn't be doing that, or somebody's going to somehow profit from their insights. So it might not even be a physical thing yet. It could just be a thought process, an idea. There's still people out there that have got these amazing ideas and views about things, but they won't share them because they're still heavily conditioned into believing that that's the wrong thing to do, and somebody's going to take it and use it in a negative way against them, or whatever. So I feel like the Imaginarium that we've created is a place where people can come and share all their ideas, and I want it to become that place that people go to have that kind of freestyling discussion about things, share their music and share their writing and their artwork, and mix it in with their opinions and ideas, and create new things, and feel as though they can come and do that because that's the place where they're going to do it. So it's kind of creating a new trend. So people are going to start thinking, well, actually, no, it's completely acceptable and completely fine to come along and share these ideas with people. And also people that have, you know, slightly different alternative modes of thinking. There's a lot of people that are obviously seeing the world as it is more, as opposed to being engulfed in the mire or the illusion of the world, you know, like the TV watchers, the, you know, people that aren't really aware of anything, or maybe only have sort of a partial awareness. There's people that are very aware and conscious but are still living in a bit of fear of what their peers might think, or, you know, work colleagues, family members, you know, what they stand to lose by coming along and sharing their opinions and views. So I'm hoping that as the Imaginarium grows, as I'm sure it will, the more people that come on, speak their minds and share their heartfelt feelings about things, other people will feel confident to come and do that as well, because it will create kind of a new trend where it becomes the norm. It replaces the old paradigm of like, oh no, that's not really acceptable. If you say that, people are going to think you're mentally ill, or whatever. Because kind of in the past, it was always artists that, you know, being an artist kind of gave you a way of being able to say things and do things that were slightly weird. And if you were an artist, then it was okay. It's like, well, yeah, but you're an artist, so you're bound to say that and do that. But if you're not an actual artist, you know, as in I don't paint a canvas, or I'm not a musician, or I'm not I don't do something that is kind of out of the norm, then I'm going to be branded as completely mad. So it would be great to have an environment where people could go and not feel scared of saying the things that they're feeling and thinking. And it's like everything, you know, throughout history, there's always been a transitional period from one cycle to another. So you know, that people have gone through a cycle. You get a few way shows that come forward and say and do things that are kind of like, oh, that person's a bit weird. And then all of a sudden everybody's doing it. It's completely normal. You know, like at one point everybody thought the earth was a certain shape and size, and then a cycle passed, and then everybody's like, no, we've decided it is this shape. It might not be that shape, who knows, just as an example. But people go through cycles, you know, the collective consciousness goes through a cycle. You get a few people that come forward and they kind of challenge the norm. They get branded as mad or insane, and then a few years go by, and then all of a sudden everybody's having that view, and it's completely normal and acceptable. So I have every confidence that in several years from now, or maybe less, that things will change. You know, we'll pass through this transitional period into the new cycle, and things will become more acceptable, because that's always been the way it's been. You know, there's always been things that have been viewed as unacceptable, and then after a period of time it becomes the norm. So it's just creating a platform for people to come and do that. So that's my vision for the Infinite Imaginarium, to give that environment, and that also a safe place, if you like. People don't have to reveal their identity. You know, they can come and, as Dan was saying, they can come and listen. They don't even have to speak, you know, in terms of the fact people might recognize their voice. They don't have to have a picture of themselves. They can just come and be part of it until they feel comfortable that they may want to speak or contribute in that respect. They don't have to be pressured into doing anything, or, you know, on show. It's not like a television show where you come on and everybody can see you. So I think it's great in that respect.
Kevin, I guess let's end it with you, I guess, expressing your vision for the Infinite Imaginarium, and then we'll end it there.
So I'm hoping that we can start this 3-part series of basically what we're talking about here, with part A being when we began to realize we were starting the process, and the things that we noticed, so that hopefully, you know, I think Minds is a great medium. I'm interested to see what the new platform updates will bring moving forward, coming into next year. Apparently there's some new tools that are going to become available, and I think what I really hope for the Imaginarium, like having Dagwood and Bathtub Jen here with us tonight, which is a very magical gift. The interconnectedness of people becoming intertwined, even at a distance, even not having met each other, kind of comes from finding that way of humanizing the experience, which I think comes either, what I'd sort of lay and envision is people being able to add a video or a little audio comment, or write something like Cartman 1 says, to humanize and make very normal what is inherently within us, that is, you know, truly and deceptively kind of demonized within our societal norm right now. So I'm hoping that some tools will come where this gets really simple. People can jump in. give their 2 cents worth and share experiences at and feel the trust that I think you and I experienced in that other event, Daniel, with the Pioneers Organic Communications Conference, and hopefully evoke, that tipping point, because like Nikki was saying, it's literally 5 to 15% within a society that sort of grasp and garner this concept together about this is what reality is, and then by their cohesive behavior, it spurns the rest of the society to go, well, this actually really makes a lot of sense. And that way it is actually very democratic. It's not forced. It's not like, oh, this is a cult or a ridiculous vision of reality, but all the things that come across here in permaculture and connectivity and like social contracts and smart contracts and the way we honor each other through our body language, through our intentions, through our thoughts, through our words. Everyone wants to participate. They're enticed to add their part to where we're going. And I think that once people see it and they can get past the social the methodology that's been ingrained in them, that tipping point kind of falls automatically. And then this division, everyone divide and conquer methodology of empire just kind of falls apart, because all the solutions kind of organically appear from working together. So I'm just very thankful to be here with you guys, and that's what I have for tonight.